customer is always right, so that in order to keep the customer coming back, in order to make the customer happy, in order to appeal to the customer, in order to attract the customer, you have to create an approach that makes for the customer to keep coming. I remember when I first went, and I did say I'm not going too far in this, but I just wanted to mention it. I remember, I think it was when I first went to Canada, or one of my trips to Canada. It may not have been the first, but it was when I went by my sister. She was in Edmonton at the time. And she bought some plumbing stuff. Didn't ask anybody for advice or guidance. And when she got home, whatever she bought could not work. Totally inappropriate. And then she sending me to go return it. Now, I'm coming from the Caribbean. And I'm coming from, is you buy stupidness? Are you all going to return the thing? And I, honestly, I was incensed at the thought. And I thought there was a measure of dishonesty in the thing. So when you carry it back, is what you plan to tell them. Because, in my view, it's your fault, not theirs. So you have to create, in my view, some kind of explanation to exonerate yourself for them to take it back. And as much as she is trying to insist that I must go take it back, I was resisting. And she's trying to tell me, no, you could take it back, it's not a problem. So when I finally went to carry it back, I was bewildered. Because they just take back the things and then I ask no question. And you say, but wait, this is crazy people? Eh? Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. That's in Canada. So I am bewildered. Because I'm thinking, but is she go and buy stupidness? She not ask nobody advice. How could you be taking back a thing now? And I remember thinking, what craziness is this? But I didn't realize at the time how far they'd gone to the customer is always right. And catering for the customer. So even when the customer was the one making the mistake, the customer was not held responsible or asked to be responsible for their mistakes. The customer was right. Now when church borrows that model, you see the problem you have. Where you then as a church, in order to make sure the customer is happy, you have to now be very careful to avoid the things that may make the customer unhappy or offended. So one of the things I said is that back now, a lot of the preaching content had to be geared or tailored or managed so that Saddleback Sam doesn't feel uncomfortable. What if Saddleback Sam is, go back to the prostitute example. What if Saddleback Sam is a prostitute? If we go and talk about prostitution as wrong or sinful, how will Saddleback Sam feel? Even get vexed and stop coming back. So it really, for me, as I said, it's something, we may have to can ventilate later on, but I just wanted to share that preliminary. But that church grew tremendously. You hear the numbers that they baptized over a period of about 20 years or so. Phenomenal. Well, I'm not calling it compromise yet. But you could see they were making sure Saddleback Sam felt comfortable coming. And that really, for me, was striking. We have to be careful. I am not suggesting we don't care about people coming, but we have to be careful that our goal is not to get people to come versus our goal is to proclaim the gospel so that people could be saved. Yeah, you can. And turn it and doctor it and water down, as Brother Yusuf said, to please man. So that for me was something I listened to today that really, it's like some of these things, but when you hear it articulated more succinctly, it really it catches your attention. You know, Saddleback Sam. Well, all right, sir. So last week, and Dr. Mac missed out on it, so I will get it on your phone. Oh, no, what happens? You remember sometimes we just stay talking before we start. So the audio was not have been on for about 5-10 minutes or so. And it still didn't come up? Oh, nah, well, I have to check and see what went wrong. Okay. Oh my, nah, I don't know. I'll have to check, see what happened last week. So last week, I showed a video, 2 videos. The first of the videos was a presentation by Jean Twangi. She's a professor of psychology, and this would have been something Doc would have certainly been interested in. She's a professor of psychology at San Diego University. She researches generational differences, and she said over the years the changes from one generation to another are negligible. But she noticed that there was a significant change around 2022. I suppose that just after that is Gen Z. Gen Z is from about 2015 to 2025. No, where am I? We're in 2025. 26. No, right. No, Gen Alpha is 2015 to 2025. Gen Z is going up to 2015. Right, so, and then there's another term for the ones that begin in 2025. So Gen Z is those of this period. Huh? Beta. Huh? Right. And then Gen Alpha. Well, some say to 2012, 2025. Eh? Age, that's age. No. Okay. So, what she realized is beta is the newest one, started last year. So what she noticed for Gen Zs is that there was a lot more report of Gen Zs saying that they felt left out, they felt lonely, they felt that they couldn't do anything right, they felt that their life wasn't useful, they felt they didn't enjoy life. All of these are phrases that generally are associated with depression. They also noticed that the number of clinical depression cases, which was what they call clinical level depression, which is what requires treatment, doubled among the Gen Zs, basically, people around that time. And then she noticed that the emergency rooms as well there was a significant increase around that time of 15 to 19-year-olds and 10 to 14-year-olds, especially girls. The emergency room admissions for self-harm doubled, and among the 10 to 14s, quadrupled. The suicides among adolescents doubled. So, as a person who studies generational changes, etc., seeing such a remarkable change, she was forced to ask what is causing that. And she said she couldn't figure it out because there were no major economic developments and changes and otherwise. And then she met a poll, and that poll is what began to introduce her to what is the related or correlational or causational basis for this development. She said a poll as in, she didn't say what the poll was, but I assume the poll related to that. Yes, yes, I follow you. Yes, a Polish person or a survey. Survey, yes. Yes. She said one thing that happened at the end of 2012 was it was the first time that the majority of Americans owned smartphones. So that was the big increase in use in smartphones in America. And she said what happened around that same time with the major injection of smartphones, is adolescents and young people started spending less time with friends and families in persons. That apparently is what the poll also revealed. And then they also revealed that teens were having significantly less time sleeping. Obviously, less time sleeping by itself can account for diminished mental health. Added to the fact that they're now less engaged with others. So she that they also discovered, in order to verify this kind of a thing, some in Denmark and other places, they did some research taking away phones from people and all that to try and see the correlation or causation, and found that when they took away the cell phones or restricted significantly screen time from children, they had significantly less anger issues, significantly less anxiety and depression, and few total difficulties in general. She also noted that over the period of time that she studied, that the test scores on science for standardized test scores on science were worse off in the countries where students spent more time for leisure purposes on devices during a school day. So that was the first presentation, and one of the things she noted as well, that a lot of young people, their first romantic relationship was with an AI program. And so it was saying that is the world that we are now in. The second presenter, he is Jared Coney Horvath. He is a cognitive neuroscientist, focuses on human learning. And he said that one of the things they discovered is that in every generation, the young people were more, the next generation were more they were more intelligent. That was the word he used. They outperformed, not more intelligent. They outperformed the previous generation until Gen Z. He said that happened right through until Gen Z. He said Gen Z was the first generation in modern history to underperform the previous generation. And then he said if you look at all the basic cognitive measures you use, from memory to literacy to numeracy, to executive functioning, to general IQ test, they did poorer than the previous generation. And again, he said the question he asked as well was, what happened to cause this shift from what had been happening before? And he said in 2010, that was when they introduced to schools technology. And he said one of the things that they've discovered as a result is human beings learn biologically. In other words, screens interfere with the learning engagement. And he gave an example of how we have fooled ourselves. So we are not always able to have a proper assessment of the diminished cognitive ability because we have changed the methods of testing to make them more palatable to the attention span and other deficiencies. So the example he gave, he said, all of us who grew up in previous generations know about a reading comprehension test with 750 words and 10 to 12 questions. And he says, The 10 to 12 questions are inferences, not factual. So if the paragraph said Joseph lives in Signal Hill and drives to church, the question would be, where does Joseph come from to go to church, or something to that effect, and you have to know, put two and two together. He said instead they have changed the method of testing, and you have one sentence with about 75 words, and the questions are factual and not inferential. So the question will be, where does Joseph live? You just had in the sentence, Joseph lives in Signal Hill. You know, and so he pointed that out, and so those we were reflecting on those two videos and what they mean for how our society has changed radically. But I was also using those two videos to connect us back with Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25 in particular, not neglecting to meet, and how in the Hebrews it associates meeting, coming together, with our general spiritual well-being. And what we are seeing here is this cognitive behavioral and whoever else it is. They are also saying that in the educational sphere, the evidence also is that meeting enables better human development and performance. And so that's what we were reflecting on. And somebody said something to me, I think it may have been Reverend Joel Alfred. She was making the point that, look, a lot of these things that we are rediscovering are things that the Bible was trying to tell us all the time. So what the education people are now saying, hey, you know, learning is better biologically. It's better if we meet and learn in the classroom because we are human ultimately. That is stuff that really was what Hebrews, for example, was saying. So I want us to advance this discussion a little more, because part of the question we are contemplating is how important is community, relationship, to our faithfulness to God, to our holiness, to our spiritual growth. How important is community, is relationship, to our faithfulness to God, to our holiness, to our spiritual growth. And using, deliberately repetitive, redundant phrases and ideas to capture all. How important is community? And community is really not just coming together. It's relational community. It's because like somebody was saying last night, I think it was Brother Steve Lord was saying, he saw some young fellas by the football field. And he said he had to stop the vehicle and talk because he couldn't believe this. He said all the fellas and them stand up there in a group. And everyone them there on the phone, who ain't they talking to the phone. So he said, but imagine you all here, stand up here, and you're not engaging one another. So that's why I also say not just community, but community relationship, because relationship, community is supposed to be about relationship. Not just location. It is about interaction. So how important is community, is relationship, to our faithfulness to God and to our holiness, to our spiritual growth? That's part of the question we ask. And that's kind of why we were looking at Hebrews 10. If you remember, when we looked at Hebrews 10 talked about, if we go back there from verse 21, the house of God is the term used in verse 21. And we understand the house of God is about the presence of God. Presence of God is holy. And so Hebrews 10:22 says, so if you want to come into the house of God, then you need to be holy. He uses language about being clean. And then he says, and this can be something that you start and stop with by, this is verse 23. And that's something I think I have to elaborate on a little bit more as well. Because in verse 23, it tells you that holiness, the pursuit of 22. Let's go back to 22. I just want to spend a moment to highlight verse 23. So verse 22 says, let us approach with a true heart, full assurance of faith, heart sprinkled clean and evil, washed from evil, and conscience, so bodies washed. So the language of 22 is, if you want to go into the house of God, you have to approach with holiness. We use one word to capture all of that. But if you notice, verse 23 tells you implicitly and perhaps explicitly that this holiness we are called to is not a off and on, up and down, start and stop phenomena. Look at what verse 22 says. Let us what? Hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who has promised. So God is faithful. So if our desire is to enter in verse 21, the house of God, and if we understand to enter in the house of God, we have to be holy. 23 is saying you can't start and stop. You can't waver. You can't be up and down. You can't be one day you're good, the next day you're not. It has to be something that you are persistent, consistent, steadfast. That's the language. And I was saying to somebody a couple of weeks ago, I think wavering is one of the characteristics of church. And I have found over the years that I have tried my best to be very hopeful, very optimistic, very positive, but also I don't forget the history, and I try not to make the history too prominent. Because you know how many times, Brother Dave, over my years now, 20-something years of ministry, I have had experience where one Sunday or 1 week, you're full of excitement because, man, let me say, let me use a Bible study. 1 week, Bible study full of people, and people who never came in whenever, and they leave when the Bible study done. They're so excited. They say, man, this was such a good experience. We didn't know Bible study is like this. Man, we gotta keep coming back now. And man, if you hear the excitement, Brother Joseph, and next week, Sister Doc are bubbling with excitement. What me say next week? Me say, nah. How? And that no 1 and 2 times, the amount of times that has happened in ministry. One moment and you hear the excitement and the zeal and the enthusiasm, and you say, yes. And next week, balapso. And I realize a lot of times the without wavering message, we don't get it. And you remember, in a different language, in Revelation 3, God warns us against lukewarm. And you remember how he described lukewarm? He says, you can't be hot and cold. You can't be, it has to be something that is consistent and persistent, that is a part of your continued growth. So here the writer of Hebrews is saying that if you want to truly live a holy life, it is something that you have to be persistent and consistent with. And if you think of athletic training, you can't become a star athlete by 1 month, 1 week, you're at it, and then another week, another month, you fall off. Am I correct? There's no way you could become a star athlete where one day you're in training and you give your fullest in the training, and then the next day you don't show up. 1 week you're there, and the next day. In the same way, regarding our spirit, our physical excellence. And here, you remember, holiness is about excelling spiritually. So I am talking not just about an athlete who want to be fit and do a little exercise. Or, nowadays, I realize a lot of exercise thing is about the fashion, Brother Yusuf. So a lot of the women now is more about being able to wear the tight pants and them thing they know, long ago track, it used to be track pants, them. Now, if you see, it's always Died. I didn't even realize that. How long that thing they have? How long that thing they have? Yeah, no, it was on, but it start, and I think because it was low, I didn't notice as much. That thing been off long. That must be why you weren't hearing last week too. Anyway, so we cannot seriously grow in our spiritual life without holding fast. And Paul puts it in different language. Paul says we have to basically persist in season and out of season, which means it's like when you feel like and when you feel like, when you feel exuberant and when you don't, when you're in the mood and when you're not in the mood. Holiness is an unwavering endeavor. A call to pursue. Oh yes, that's the title of the Hebrews text. So you have to be willing to persevere. So holiness is a commitment. You're getting up every morning, you're working on it, you ain't giving in, you ain't giving up, you're pressing forward, or to use the word, you're holding fast. So that is an important part of our spiritual development. It is holding fast. And then that's where now it talks about not neglecting the assembly and provoking one another, is verse 24, which means you have to be pushing and helping one another along. You know, because the truth of the matter is, if we are by ourselves, we easier able to give up. You ever notice when you're walking with crowd, it has been much better than when you walk by yourself? You feel the pressure more when you walk by yourself. You know, and when you walk with crowd, sometimes you don't even know you reach. You know, and people tell you, yes, there's some persons who may consider themselves self-motivated, but people tell you when you walk out with a coach or a trainer, it's a different thing than when you're doing your own thing. Because the self-motivated person, they tend to feel they reach far, but they don't realize if they had a trainer, they might have reached further. Because it's that person telling, hey, go, push. Because whether we like it or not, we do not naturally keep pushing. We reach a point where we say, boy, nah. I could tell you sometimes when I go running and thing, I smile at my own self. So let's say now I say, you know what? I'm going to run, and then when I reach out by the building there, you know, I'm going to walk from there. And if I reach out by the building there, and people there wrong are running a little further on. Yes! It's amazing. You just... Group teaching.
The point is, we couldn't have anybody pulling away, because even if that person pulled away, everybody so it put a pressure on the members of the group. Don't come and do your work. Since you come, you are answering and you are reading, man, taking it out of you. He getting, everybody get fight. He get fight and he do not.
That's an interesting point in truth, you know, Doc. Is an interesting thing in truth. That group assignment, where all them getting the same mark, is amazing how that does create provocation. Because when you have somebody who not pulling the weight, now if you didn't have the same arrangement and them not pull the weight, that them problem, you leave them, you do your own thing. But when they're not pulling your weight, you're complaining to teacher, you're calling them, you're trying your best to get them to do their work. Because yes, it's amazing. And yeah, it's amazing in truth how putting people into a group and saying, hey, your success is going to be determined by the functionality of the group. And it's amazing that people who would otherwise slack off, the rest pulling and pushing and tugging them. If what? And you still get some who get left behind. Because they refuse to still do the work. Okay. Yeah, yes, yep. Social loafing. Yep. Right. Because they say you got the time, so they let you do all the work. No, but the truth is, you're right, Doc. From the time they're in a group, you now become far more mindful of what the other persons are supposed to do. You realize if they're in a class, a lot of them children don't pay attention to whether the others who ain't doing work or whatever it be. You put them in a group, all of a sudden, sometimes the first group meeting, you better make sure. Are you with me? Yeah. Yep. Yep. Bible study allows us to be able to share and interact like that. And you know, so Hebrews is making an interesting point about how in order for us to be holy, he then says it requires a provoking, a community, a working together kind of a thing. So verse 24 talks about encouraging one another. 25, not neglecting to come together. As 25 is the encouraging, 24 is the provoking. Because it is saying that our ability to become holy is significantly informed by how we function in community. So hear what John Wesley says. Let me hear your thoughts on this before we go further. John Wesley, the 18th century founder of Methodism, famously declared, "The gospel of Christ knows of no religion but social, no holiness but social holiness." For Wesley, holiness was not a solitary achievement but a lived reality that required deep community and active service to others. Wesley's concept of social holiness had two dimensions. One is the social holiness, deep community, and the other is the active service to others. Communal accountability, the first part. He says true holiness cannot be practiced in isolation. True holiness cannot be practiced in isolation. Wesley believes believers must be in a society or community to hold one another accountable, share struggles, and grow together through mutual encouragement. Let me hear your thoughts. Iron sharpness, iron, Proverbs. Let me hear your thoughts. Iron sharpness, iron. Anybody else?
Each person figures that they stand alone, and there is a sort of mafia type of, we're not sharing, we're not telling one another our business, we're not saying I have a trouble here, my child is giving me to know. You don't say those things at all. You know, you don't want people to know your business. Them in your house either, because they can watch your things.
So it's a kind of secret society kind of culture.
You know, that is what is required with any meeting. Any is a non-profit society or fellowship of men and women who meet together regularly to help each other stay clean. Right? So every addict need another addict in order for them to recover. Yeah. So
That's an interesting thing as I was coming to, that really reminded me in truth that one of the realities of NA is the recognition that when you try to stay clean and get clean by yourself, the failure rate is far higher. So here is John Wesley saying, if you really want to be holy, you cannot achieve holiness by yourself. You need community for holiness. Does that sound authentic, right, legitimate? That's a good question, Doc. Doc say who you go practice on. Interesting point. And they hold you accountable. But you see, there's something else I want to throw in the mix here. In psychology, and some of you of course are aware of it, they have something called the Johari window. Now the Johari window it says that each individual has 4 parts or windows. They said there's a window, or one of the parts is where you know about yourself, but others don't know. They said there's another part of you that others know and you don't know. There's another window where you and others know. And there's another window that neither of you know. Now, if this is true, and I have no doubt it is, I'll tell you why. If this is true, it then means, I don't know, tested and proven, correct. If this is true, and I have no doubt that it is, it means that at least one window you need other people. You see me reasoning? Yes, there's a window that neither you nor others know. So let me just leave that as the blind side. And there's one that you and others know. So in a sense, you really don't need people for that one day. But there's a window that what? Others know and you don't know. Now, if you don't have people in your life, then that now becomes 2 blind spots. Because it's the other people in your life that fills up that window where you don't know, but them know. And you know where I find this is tested and proven? This is the example I like to use for that. You ever notice if somebody is retiring, or if they're celebrating something, a birthday or so at their workplace, and people decide to do a little thing for them. Let me say it's retire. And they decide to do a little thing. And you know when somebody start to dramatize, what you just do? That not me, I just do that? Yeah, and you know, they dramatize how, you know, when you come in, so, you come and you sit down, and when you sit down, you're always taking the bottle and beating the bottle, so, no, I don't do that. And then all of a sudden you're catching yourself. Oh, wait. It's like it's true. Somehow I remember myself beating the bottle in truth. And it's amazing when people start to tell you what you do. You sometimes say, nah. So, and they say, no, but you notice every time you come in the house, you always just look up and look around, so. And Brother Dave, no, I don't do that. And then when you come in the house next time, and you do, you say, but you know, I never realized I just do that. And it's because other people see you in a way you don't see yourself. And it's the community that allows you to be able to see and discover some of these things. You know, and even on a positive side, sometimes even in the context of the church, you know, let me say Yosef is there every Sunday and Yosef singing. And Sister Lorraine said, boy, Brother Yosef could sing. So she go whisper to Yosef, Brother Yosef, why you enjoying the choir? You know your song very good. Brother Yosef, me can't sing. No, because he never really thought of himself as a singer. He never really think he could sing. Eventually, Sister Lorraine encouraged him enough. Brother Yosef reached in the choir. Then Brother Yosef there in the choir now. And Brother Yosef, they in the choir. What? What happened? Oh, you see that? I didn't even know them ladies. Brother Yosef, you should see behind it. Oh, you know, I never knew that. I didn't know that. I didn't know. But I suppose he took your advice, so he's very conservative. He's very conservative with his singing. So after but you see the brother Leon, you see that is again the benefit of community. But at least he know. Right. but here, brother Leon, hear this. You remember I told you there's a positive and there's a negative. No, but here, I guarantee you, because he's aware, nobody ain't going to get brother Leon to go to no national event and go say he volunteering to sing. Are you with me? Because he know Dr. Mac don't want him. Boy, relax yourself. Are you with me? I remember, I can't say at the upper mic, so I ain't going to tell you the event. I remember being at the event. 200 plus people, foreigners and others. Well, near 200 people. Foreigners and others. And somebody go up to dance and somebody go up to sing. Let me deal with the sing one first. And I said to somebody next to me, I say, I suspect she does sing in church. So why you say so? I say, well, you know, church people is some of the most encouraging. you know, and people just misinterpret the encouragement. You know, when you go up and you sing, even if you're not sung right, they'll say, man, you know, you did well, and it's encouraged. They're not, and they clap for you and all that. They're not wanting you to feel bad, but they don't expect you to think that they mean that you're a singer. So now, because she obviously feels with all the encouragement and the clapping, and here, you know, church people sometimes so wicked, because sometimes it's when you sing bad, they just clap harder. When you come down, you get big round of applause. Eh? But you ain't know that. You ain't know that. You ain't know the clapping you down. You swear you did a great job. So now we have a big event. And guess what? You volunteer for sing. And you're gone now where strangers there. Well, if it's you in your home church, and if you're in your bathroom and your house, you know, it's a more forgiving environment. But you gone on a big stage where all kind of stranger and foreigner, and people want to know what happening there. You can't, and that is why community helps us to be able to see things that we don't see about ourselves, both for good and for bad. All have mercy. Doc, you know, easy. So, oh gosh. So to make sure he can't see the words and them to sing, she take off the glasses. As a good daughter, boy. Oh Lord. But if I suppose he was making a joyful noise indeed. But that's what community does. It helps us. And the window, that is where you know and others know, is also important because, you see, one of the problems, holiness by trying to be holy by yourself, the danger of that is something Matthew speaks of where we talk about, in Matthew where, you remember Matthew 7, 22, 23, I think says, not everybody who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom, and say, but Lord, didn't we? And what we call that, what does that reflect in terms of the person, self, not just the ego. It's ego, but there's something else I want to highlight that reflects. Self something. Huh? Not pride. Didn't we cast out demons? Didn't we prophesy? You know, and they said, Lord, Lord, and they thought they were certain they were okay. Not self-praise still. Huh? Well, delusion, or the other word, deception. Thanks. Self-deception. Human beings have a real potential for self-deception. On that day, many will say, Lord, but didn't we prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many deeds of power in your name? And then I will tell them I don't know you. But when you read that, notice it's a question. It's a question, didn't we? Because in their minds, they are okay. And look at the strong objection of God in verse 23. Then I will say to you, depart from me. Listen how Jesus describes them. How he describes them as what? Now, you have to ask yourself, think about it. Look at the extent of delusion. Jesus sees them as evildoers, but they see themselves as making heaven. Think about that. Jesus, he doesn't just see them as ungodly or they ain't saved or some nice soft word, you know. He sees them as evildoers. But yet, even though Jesus sees them as evildoers, they see themselves as in heaven. You see, that's the danger of community not being part of our journey and functioning right. Because community provides us with an opportunity for clarity.
Because people often surround themselves with like-minded people, and that community will encourage the deception, right? So, you know, that.
Well, I'm coming back to a point like that because that's why I have Genesis 11 to make reference to, but we're coming back to that just now.
I'm speaking of Tobago because I am Tobagonian. I did not live here all my life. My mother was a well-known teacher over there. What I found is that when I come back here, whatever I do or say, it's wonderful because it's teacher Aggie daughter. And in my head, I know it can't be that everything you do wonderful. But you can't get no honest, because criticism is good to improve. The only person who was willing to tell me anything was Dr. Mark. Dr. Mark said, you can't stand up there and only talk to the choir. Stop it. You know, telling you frankly, if you're doing something off key, but so good, it's so wonderful, teacher Aggie daughter. You know, it's a funny thing in a very, well, I suppose a small society, you know.
Because you remember the church I referred to, Saddleback Sam. You remember the principle that governed that church was not a principle of provocation, was a principle of accommodation. Because remember, the way they structured their church was, how do we make the customer feel comfortable? How do we make Saddleback Sam feel comfortable? So rather than, you remember Hebrews 10:23, 24 says, we're supposed to be provoking one another to love and good works. So community that works right really is what we are saying. What we are saying is, and I'll clarify when we get to Genesis 11, You cannot be holy without community. But community can also destroy your journey. But you can't get there without them. So it's not as if because community could be the thing that corrupts you and so I stay away from community, because by staying away from community you actually can't get to where you want to get to. So it's an interesting challenge, because you need community to get there, but you need community to function rightly to enable you to get there. Because it is when we are willing to say in that window that you don't know, Dr. Max say, oh, you know you can't sing. You know you're not doing right. You know you're only talking to the choir. Is when, and you don't even realize it until somebody is willing to provoke. Then is when you know, say, oh, so your engagement is improved because community enables the improvement. Because you don't see some of your own shortcomings. You don't see some of your lapses. Sometimes it's when you sit down in community, let's say in the context of Bible study or a service and sermon, and then you hear and then you realize, but wait boy, it's true. I didn't even realize this is something I just think, say or do. And so we have to be careful, because without community, we are not able to get to holiness. Because we have a real tendency towards self-deception. Even with how you dress sometimes. You ever notice some people dress and they look confident that they look good? And them is the only one who confident that they look good? and then we say what? Well, apart from the child, you know what we normally say when somebody left the house and they think they look good but they ain't look good? We say what? They ain't got no mirror. But if they got children, children are always willing to tell you. Yep. Children, yep. Yes. Yes, the wives them does do that too. If what? Because again, it's true. Yep, the salespeople, true. Yep, it's true, it's true. It's true. It's true. Yeah, their purpose is to tell it look good, so you could buy, salespeople. But again, that is community not working right. You see, because again, when money, for example, becomes your primary goal, then even if you have to tell somebody it's the best product that they ever made, you know, an advertisement, we have to be very careful, you know. Advertisement is dignified lying in many cases. What we have done is made a career and a professional thing of lying, and we legitimize it and call it advertisement. We have to be, and marketing, we have to be so careful, you know. And so the point that John Wesley makes is we need community if we are to accomplish holiness. We need community if we are to become holy. And again, in a sense, you know, if you want to be a mediocre, lukewarm Christian, you could do that all by yourself, you know. If you want to be a mediocre, lukewarm Christian, you could do that all by yourself. But if you're serious about your growth in Christ, you need community. That's the point Paul is making. You can't grow in Christ. And that is why they're saying, if you look at it, let's go back to the study we looked at and we referred to. A lot of the children are functional, even though they have mental health issues and they're depressed and all of that. But they're functional. If you're looking at your children's well-being or excelling, then is when you become concerned about their mental health and all these kind of stuff. But if all you want is to make sure the child finished primary school, get a get into a good school, finish secondary school, and get a good job. There are a lot of parents for whom that's more than enough. Once the child not getting in trouble, police never lock me up, lock them up, teacher never come and call me, and they're doing well in school. For a lot of parents, that's all, they feel they're successful parents. And when you listen to some parents and you ask them, they'll tell you, nah, I don't get no problem with her. I don't get no problem with him. And as far as they're concerned, I've done well. They don't give me no trouble. They get education, and we good. And don't realize that sometimes, yes, those parts of the matrix is good, but in terms of their general holistic well-being, it ain't there. And so, requirements, standards.
Requirements. But they will not contribute anything to university life. They will, man, you can't beat them, but they will not contribute anything to life. I was there to see that, including in the requirements. They add these extracurricular activities and so what have you done whether outside of study books?
Right. Interesting. So that's a university and deliberating, recognizing that a person's well-being is not just evidenced by their academic achievement. But for a lot of parents, that's what it is. As far as they're concerned, that's a good. And they don't realize that sometimes there are all these other issues that are happening. And so some of these things come up when people get married. And I tell you, I have to deal with some of them because that's when some of their dysfunction and issues from childhood, from the home, start manifesting itself in a relationship now. Because remember, marriage exposes stuff that you could hide otherwise. So here, if all we wanted were children who did well in school, you would never, the research, yes, we know mental health is a concern, but it's because the researchers are now looking at deeper issues than the performance issues. And even that, if you notice, you would not have noticed performance issues if they didn't interrogate the issue properly, because they dropped the standard, so performance looks good. You remember when we had to do, it was only 2 or 3 subjects had SBA? And SBA was, I think, 20 to 30% or somewhere. Now SBA in some subjects is 50% and 60% too. So if they say if you pass the SBA, you pass. So it's almost as if they're creating an arrangement to make sure you don't fail. Oh, you mean, of course, some of them just get good help to finish the SBA in a manner that the help is not helping, the help is doing. There's a SBA that you do with help, and there's a SBA that helps that you don't do. So we have to be careful. If what we are asking about is holiness, not just some mediocre spirituality, then you could do that by yourself. You could stay in your own house, read your own psalm, say your own prayers, and all of that. And you could be, as people say, I'm a spiritual person. But if holiness is what you're aspiring for, what the Bible is saying, if you're looking for an authentic relationship with God, if you're looking to grow spiritually, if you're looking for a deeper dive in your walk with God, you need community for that. Love your neighbor as yourself. Yep. How you gonna love properly? Yep. Correct. So it's interesting because it challenges us to consider and contemplate our spiritual development and how people, others, are a critical part of our spiritual development. Let's go to Ecclesiastes 4. Ecclesiastes 4, 7 to 12. Ecclesiastes 4, 7 to 12. So remember, the book of Ecclesiastes, to be honest, is a book I'm always fascinated by. To put it into context, people believe Ecclesiastes is an old man. Some say in a rocking chair. And they say, you know, he's old now and he's looking back at life and he's trying to make sense of life. So when Ecclesiastes 4, 7 to 12. And so what say is, some people believe it's Solomon in his old years. Solomon, and I suppose you remember Solomon when he was younger. He was Simsima, the girl them sugar, you know. So Solomon was a man who felt the more woman you get, the merrier, you know. And so, you know, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes are believed to be, you know, some of Solomon's work. And so it's believed that Solomon or whoever wrote it in their old age is sitting down and reflecting on their life. Which happens. You look back at life, and in his case, he's trying to make sense of life, to figure out, you know, having lived life. Because when you don't reach a certain age, you know, that's why, you know, you tell the young people, hey, no, they ain't got nothing me see already in me long life, you know. You know, because it gives you such a panoramic view of life. And so he has this panoramic view of life, and you read through Ecclesiastes, and he's making assessment of so many different things in life, and what he is trying to figure out, what will help life to make sense. And what he discovers until the end is that a lot of things, he called them vanity of vanities. Meaning, he said, boy, them things ain't make no sense. Vanity meaning is a waste of time. Some versions say meaningless. It ain't add up to nothing. He starts out by talking things like, I make plenty money, I had plenty money, I pursue pleasure, and after pursue pleasure, well, but wait, boy, this is a waste of time. You know, he said, boy, it just look as if, you know, you work hard, you're dead, you wake up, and, you know, in the morning, and wherever. He says, all of these things just seem like a waste of time. He's trying to make life make sense. I love this book. And this is one of the reflections he's having on how can I make sense of life. Somebody can read for us the 7 to 14, then we'll go through it a little piece by piece. How can I make sense of life? And, you know, this is the question, one of his reflection.
Ecclesiastes 4, verse 7 to 14. Again I saw vanity under the sun, the case of solitary individuals without sons or brothers, yet there is no end to all their toil, and their eyes are never satisfied with riches. For whom am I toiling, they ask, and depriving myself of pleasure? This also is vanity and an unhappy business. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up the other. But woe to one who is alone and falls and doesn't have another to help. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though one might prevail against another, two will withstand one. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. Better is a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king who will no longer take advice. One can indeed come out of prison to reign, even though born poor in the kingdom.
Thanks. It really was to go up to 12, but I don't know how I noted. I have written down 14. So let's go back to 7 and try to decode. So 7 and 8. 7 is really, again, I saw vanity under the sun. Again, I saw meaninglessness. And what is this meaninglessness? In other words, said, boy, I'm looking to see how things really will make sense in this world. Eh? And let me tell you another thing. It's like he's saying, let me tell you all another thing that I realize they make sense. And that's what starts in verse 8. So I want somebody to explain for me verse 8. Then somebody else would explain 9 and 10. And then maybe 11 and 12. So somebody will explain to me verse 8, somebody else 9 and 10, and then 11, somebody else 11 and 12. So verse 8, the case of solitary individuals without sons or brothers, yet there is no end to all their toil, and their eyes are never satisfied with riches. So for whom am I toiling, they ask, and depriving myself of pleasure? This also is vanity and unhappy business. Somebody give me an explanation. If Oprah Winfrey, that's not an explanation. That's a illustration or example. Mm-hmm. That's a name called, yes, name dropping. Mm-hmm.
Somebody. So, so the case of the solitary, people who are solitary, they're on their own. They have no children, they have no family, but they're constantly on the hustle. They are buying up businesses, they have millions in their account, and they're never satisfied. At the end of the day, when it comes to them dying, right, or when they are now on their own or they are sick, they now have to ask the question, to what end? So I've worked hard all my life, I have all this money. Now, I have nothing, no one to share all of this with. What is the point? That they are unhappy. That all that toil wasn't worth it. So while you have the time, as they say, make hay while the sun shines, enjoy, get married if you still have the opportunity to. If you can't make a few children, okay. If you can't, adopt a few. There are plenty who need homes to be loved. And, enjoy life. Enjoy, teaching the next generation how to be better so as not to repeat the mistakes that you were making.
Anybody else wants to give a perspective? What is the summary challenge or encouragement here as well? How is this writer suggesting life should be lived for it to be meaningful and happy? We know how he's saying it should not. How it should not. Why is it should not? He's emphasizing community living. Don't live for yourself then. Yes, he's saying here, don't live for yourself. You're working hard and you're pampering yourself. You're getting more money. You'll get rich. All of this you do for yourself. And then when all is said and done, Brother David say, you do all of this for yourself, and guess what he say? Self still not satisfied and happy. You end up now, and it's a pity I didn't remember. There's a footballer, Shannon Sharp, who literally said this is his story. He didn't bother with relationship and nothing like that, and so it was about his career and making money. And now he is retired and rich, and he has nobody to share it with, he says. And it's an unhappy feeling. You imagine how sometimes, and that is why it's so lonely. Because here what makes it worse. Because even when you try to share it with people, and you know that they're props, it doesn't even bring joy. So you imagine somebody like him with all the money, and then you buy some, $1,000 wine. And you go pop the bottle, and you're alone drinking your $1,000 wine. Even though it's $1,000 you pay for that wine, $1,000 US, Brother Dave. And you feel, boy, look how I could drink $1,000 wine. It just feel wrong. So you decide now, forget props. Dave, come now, man, I got $1,000 wine, I want to share it with somebody. Dave said, stop drinking long time, you're right there. So you say, boy, I got $1,000 bottle of wine, come. And Even if Joseph decide to come, you know he only coming because it's 1,000 bottles of wine. It's not because he really want to be here in my company. Wow. So what the writer is saying here, don't live for yourself. He says, your sense of happiness, fulfillment, or the word vanity is meaningfulness, you know. The New International Version uses meaninglessness there. He is saying, meaningful life is not a life lived in isolation, solitary. It's a life lived with people. Meaningful life is a communal life. So you can't truly live a meaningful life by yourself. That's the basic principle. Come back there. Then who could give us a thought on 11 to 10, 9 and 10? Yes, Mary.
And 10.
No, it's 9 and 10. We reach 11 and 12 yet. 9 and 10. Who will tell us about 9 and 10? Good advice on marriage. Eh? Show. Eh? What's that? No, I missed that one then. What's that? Okay. That is good advice on marriage. Oh. Right.
What I would say for 10 is that it is important to have somebody around you. Especially like, for example, you have a lot of people living by themselves. And a lot of things could happen. You could get ill. Nobody knows what is happening to you. Somebody could break in your house. Nobody knows what's happened to you. So it's always good to have persons around you, but not just persons, but genuine persons around you who are not there for just, peace sake, who are not there just to use you. So what 9 and 10 is encouraging us, as Auntie Ann said, good example or good argument for marriage. Also, I will go a little further and say good example and good argument for family.
Companionship, yeah, but effectively for others in your life, for relationship. Yes, because what it's saying is for community, whether the community is family community, friendship community, relationship, it's really saying being by yourself, doing self thing, it's not going to be to your advantage, because when you fall down, crash, fail, even medically speaking, you have nobody to lift you up. It's a serious situation when there's nobody you can call, Yeah, oh yeah, there are a lot of people have died in fact, yeah, and for weeks sometimes nobody there was a news item, there's a news item in this week. I'm trying to remember if it was local news or where, that somebody who is always in church and they weren't in church, and because they weren't in church, people then said, no boy, something wrong, and started calling, because they say she don't miss church for nothing. And that's how they found her at home. I don't know if she had died or she had collapsed or whatever it is. Or it was the news? Okay. So and yes, it's true. I think early in this week somewhere in the news. So again, because you notice how they find out something went wrong? Because community, I was saying to somebody the other day, even with church, people, and I don't think people understand this enough. If, let me say, Brother Joseph, he comes church, he don't come church. He come church, he don't come church. Brother Joseph, sick, and in a real bad state. And then later on, hey, Brother Joseph complained. But I be sick and nobody from the church. I was going through a real rough time. Because you know, when you're sick, especially if you're fighting with death, having people call, check in, inquire is $1 million. Pass, pray for you, encourage you. That's $1 million. In other words, that's what this is saying. When you fall down, to have people who could what? Lift you up. But here what happened? Because Brother Joseph hardly, whether he there or not there, wavering. When we ain't see Brother Joseph, we don't conclude that is because something wrong. Because it's just not normal for him. And we don't realize how valuable that is. That when you are consistently present, not wavering, and you're not there, somebody will now know, hey, something wrong. Let me check in on him. Which is accountability, support, helping one another up. But when you ain't there, you ain't there. Sometimes you go through the roughest time.
On mornings, I just get up and just send WhatsApp messages. Morning, have a good day. Some people never reply. You know, 2 days, we don't send messages. What happened?
Even though they don't reply. Interesting. Because again, because it's your unwavering action. No, you don't. They didn't see it. They immediately say, "Boy, something wrong." You see, and that's why people don't realize community is invaluable. You know, and if you ever notice when a family is mourning, when somebody dies, that's when you see how important community is, family is. Family you never saw before. It makes the mourning so different. It sometimes it distracts you, it lifts your spirit, it encourages you. It is, and you know, I was saying, I think at the funeral on Saturday, I was making the point when I was praying with the family. It's amazing when a person in the family dies. Nobody needs to tell other people, you need to be there, you need to. Some people who you not see for long, they know it's family and I have to be there. It's amazing, you know. And anyway. Right. Yeah. Wow. The rhythm of the rhythm of life. Yeah. It's he should have put in air plugs. She should have put in air plugs. Brother Dave?
His mother in Trinidad, she living alone, and she called him to tell him that she numb on one side, she can't. And he called me to ask me if I could drop him in town so he could go, to go to the airport to go to Trinidad to see my mother. Right? And he called me the night to tell me that she ended up with a minor stroke. What happened? She had to crawl off the bed, go to like she living with some neighbors downstairs or something, and show the key for her door out the, it was same thing they're talking about living alone, how,
In Trinidad, when you live alone, you gotta live in a prison and lock up and all kind of thing. Yeah, it's true. It's true. So, and Sister Annie saying if they were warm, it might not have caused the blood to clot. Indeed. Verse 11 and 12. Let's end with 11 and 12.
So 11 and 12 is basically saying, like, if you're not together, you won't be able to support and help each other. But if you're alone, you're lonely and you really don't have the power to, like, talk to someone. You have to go online or find something to do just to make your loneliness go away.
All right. So to make your loneliness go away, you try to go talk to people on the phone and wherever else it is. Chat GPT, so specifically Chat GPT. Okay, all right. But the point is, again, you achieve less by yourself. You're stronger together. A threefold cord is not easily broken. No, we use this to refer to marriage. This is not speaking specifically about marriage, but we use it. Right? And then it says, it's speaking about the need for company. If two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? It's speaking about the value of others, company. And then it says, and though one might prevail against another, if you have an enemy, a single enemy, you may get through. Two will definitely withstand one. So yes, you might be stronger one-on-one, but if it's two of you versus one, there's almost a certainty you'll win. So it's saying two, no doubt, can withstand one. You say you might make it if it's you alone, but your chances of success are much greater if it's more of you. And that's why it says a threefold cord is even stronger. And the point as well goes back to Satan. Our ability to withstand Satan is greater together than alone. And I often talk about Genesis 3 and why Satan engaged Adam and Eve as separately versus together. Because if they were together consulting each other, then they would be stronger in resisting Satan. But when we try to take on Satan by ourselves, we are far more vulnerable and we are far more prone to failure. Unity is strength. And we forget that. Yeah, it ain't matter how strong and wise you are, you can't defeat Satan by yourself. And we have to be willing. Talk to somebody and check in with somebody, connect with somebody, because especially, you see, when you're going through Satan coming after you hard, those are times you need to keep connected, because Satan tries to pick us off one by one and mash up, isolate, divide and conquer. But if you put the three together, stronger so. Now let's end with a reference to Genesis 11. Verse 6 of Genesis 11. This was Babel. And hear what God says. Let's read that together. Verse 6 of Genesis 11. And the Lord said, look, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. Nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. God is telling you He put a power in togetherness, in community, that allows us to be strong and accomplish great things. That's what He says, And the problem with this Babel story, because they were using their unity, Sister Lorraine, they were using their unity wrongly, incorrectly, unhelpfully. That's why God said, no, I have to confuse the language. Because when community, togetherness, when people come together for the wrong reasons, it is also powerful. Because coming together is powerful. So when you're in a community that affirms you in wrong, it is equally destructive. Well, even that, That is an amazing thing, you know, when they were going to crucify Jesus. I have been wondering whether or not it's a question of the crowd or how crowds function. Meaning, sometimes all you needed is about 5-6 people to start shouting, you know. And sometimes the whole crowd there, and some of them other people saying, when they start, give us Barabbas. Some of them say, hey, Barabbas. Why Barabbas? Who Barabbas be? We the other man, we do what is what Jesus do. But Jesus was Barabbas, but Jesus wasn't a good man. Well, why they asking for Barabbas instead? Yes. You lose your identity. You have to be careful. That's why you gotta be careful which crowd you find yourself in. Yes. And sometimes it's 3 people start out. Sometimes it's a 5-6 of them shouting loud, you know. And nobody else ain't shouting. But what Pilate hears is the few of them who shouting. And unfortunately, because the others kept quiet, the loud mouth of the few became what was most influential. You ever notice that sometimes that's what happens? And I tell people, I've tried, the other day I think I was talking to Aliana, whoever, I said, look, you have to be careful. The loudest voices don't often represent the majority. And very easily we get caught by the loudest voices and say, well, people don't, and they're all this, and don't realize that sometimes it's a small, loud group. And the masses have a different view. Just unfortunate that they kept quiet. So, and that's why sometimes the louder voices try to talk first. Because, because when they were looking for God to talk in big earthquake, God ain't talking the big earthquake, He just talking the quietness. And a lot of times in crowd, you have to be careful with crowd dynamics, because crowd, some people, they're smart enough to know, let me first shout up. Because once I first talk, the others now who have a different view become a little bit more apprehensive. No dog bark, yeah. The dog might say, yeah, but it ain't barking. And that's why even for young people, you know, you have to be careful with crowds. Because sometimes the loudness of the crowd doesn't tell you the integrity of the crowd. And you could get influenced by all the noise and not listen to this quietness, the still small voice. One of the requirements.
You got to change the people and the places and the things that you do. So the people who used to associate with you can't associate with them no more, you know, because they could always influence you to use again. Yeah.
That's an interesting point, which goes back to the point we're ending on. What Brother Dave is saying is one of the requirements for recovering addicts is that you have to covenant to change your crowd. And it makes sense, because when the community is steering you in the wrong direction, you could that's what helps delusion, you know. You could be convinced you're going right when you're going wrong because everybody around telling you good job. So it's really important to have a different kind of community, in truth, when you're trying to go forward. Yep. All right, let's pause there then. Let's pray. Gracious God and Heavenly Father, help us to be able to find the right kind of company as we continue to seek to grow in you. We thank you for this company, this opportunity to come together around your word, because of your word, for your word, to learn your word, to grow in your word. Help us, oh God, to understand that it is not only true for education, psychologists, and cognitive and behavioral science. It is that we need one another. It is even more true for our spiritual journey, that we need meeting, we need coming together, we need one another if we want to truly live holy and right and righteous lives. So God, as we go from here, may we value each other more, since we are so integral to our spiritual growth and development. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And may the grace of our Lord, Savior Jesus Christ, love of God and fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all now and forevermore. Amen. Good night and God bless you.